Welcome to the Secure the Perimeter podcast.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on the Secure the Perimeter podcast. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting topic. We're going to talk about how to secure your finances. One of the first things you need to do when you want to secure the perimeter of your family, your home, and your lifestyle is to get control of your finances, something that a lot of people don't talk about or pay attention to, but it's the one thing that could make or break you. Finances are something that hold most people in captivity because it controls them because of status or position. And so today we're going to talk about 6 main things that you can do to kind of break yourself free from being controlled by finances, by money. And so I got my good friend Mike here on the podcast. We're going to kind of collaborate and talk about money. Both of us are former Marines, so we spent a lot of time in the Marine Corps. We're going to talk about that, military pay, and how you can still have a good lifestyle with limited, money or limited income. So, one of the first things you can do in any situation is program your mind. You literally got to program your mind, and that's in anything that you decide to do, whether you're working out, staying in shape, or you're deciding, you make the decision to get married. You have to program your brain housing group. I talk about this a lot when it comes to marriage. When I decided to marry my wife, I pre-programmed my brain that, there was no contingency plan. There was no alternate route. And I think a lot of people fail to do that. They fail to program their brain housing group, their mind, and they give themselves, an option B or a way out. And so today, we talk about, your finances. I think it's important to have this conversation with people because too many people today are strapped. They are living paycheck to paycheck, literally. In fact, there's a lot of people living about a paycheck or two behind, which is crippling your household income, your lifestyle. And so we're going to talk about that today. So, Mike and I both, being former Marines, we knew when we, raised our right hand and we swore an oath to our country, we knew what we were getting into, right? The pay wasn't great, was it, Mike?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, the pay wasn't great, especially starting out as a private, PFC, E1, E2. You're not breaking any you're not breaking any records with the pay we were getting, but also, we're young. We're just getting started out. I was 18 when I joined the delayed entry program, 19 when I finally made my way into the Marine Corps 6 months later. And I know that the pay I lived on was very limited, man. It was like a few $100 every couple weeks. It wasn't a lot of money. But I also didn't have a whole lot of debt. Like, I'm just getting started out, and the reason why I decided to join the Marine Corps is because college wasn't the route for me. It wasn't the path I wanted to take. So I didn't want to strap myself and load myself up with debt right out of the gate. So, when I started out in life, I decided, when I wanted to join the Marine Corps, I wanted to start out and join the Marine Corps for the journey and the experience, right? And so that came with a cost because we weren't making lots of money. So talk to me about, how it was for you when you joined.
Well, when I joined, I didn't really do it for the money at all. I just, I always wanted to be a Marine since I would say probably about 5-6 years old, since I watched the Full Metal Jacket with my pops. But anyway, yeah, when I went in, I never thought about money. I just, like I said, I wanted to be that guy that gets that eagle and anchor put in his hand and earn that title. So if you join the military of any kind, not let alone the Marine Corps, I think you're in a rude awakening if you're joining it for the money or any kind of well, the benefits are there. At least that's good. The government gives you pretty good benefits. But I remember going in and remember going and marching down the PT or I'm sorry, the what is it called? The PX. Sorry.
Yeah, the PX.
The PX.
Yeah.
And they have like this
The
little
store,
PX. Yeah,
the base store.
Yeah, the base store. Sorry. We were marching down there, and it's just chaos over there, just yelling and screaming, making you do some stupid crap. And anyway, you had to pay for your own stuff. That first paycheck you got, you marched your butt down the PX, and they made you pay for, I think it was like shoe polish, edge, that edge shine stuff. I forgot what it was called.
For your boots, yeah.
Yeah, and all that Brasso,
yeah,
all that good stuff. And I was like, man, I'm using my first paycheck for this.
Yeah, man.
But you ain't spending much on anything, so yeah. I mean, I joined the Marine Corps just to be a Marine, and little pay if it was. I actually saved quite a bit of money because, heck, I was in the field all the time.
Yeah.
Eventually, when I became a lance corporal to a corporal, I actually saved up quite a bit of money, especially when I got deployed. I came back, and you look at your bank account, and I had over, I think, 20,000 or something in my bank account, and it was a big surprise to me, and I never had anything like that before. But that's because you're always busy, you're always out in the field, and I was able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of Marines had a problem with that, especially Okinawa. I had a couple buddies, they were gamblers, and they would always be trying to fish for money from other Marines, myself. Sometimes I loan it to them if they really needed it. Hence, that's the loan, the word loan. A lot of people don't know what that means. It means not given, pay me back kind of thing. But nobody would ever pay you back. So, I mean, I would just, like, loan the money, and I would just assume that I would never get it. And otherwise, you're breaking kneecaps,
Yeah.
But in any case, let's get to that point where you just asked, did you join because of the pay?
Yeah. But let's get to
Absolutely not.
one point I think that you just highlighted. Joining the Marine Corps, you don't make a lot of money, especially as, a private PFC, but you just said, you went to the ATM one day and you found that you had like a balance of like $20,000. Mm-hmm. Especially in that day, it's a lot of money. Even by today's standards, 20 grand is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And although you weren't getting paid a lot, you didn't go out and then blow your money. Too many dudes, even, listen, whether you go the military route or college kids, get some money in their hands and they go out and party it away, You just basically explained something we're talking about today, the responsibility of money. Although you weren't making a lot of money, you were still able to pack away a lot of cash because you decided you didn't want to spend it because you were so busy, being in the field, being deployed. I did the same thing, and I was putting my money aside, a portion of my check I would put away into U.S. savings bonds because if you remember, the finance dude came around and, recommended you invested your money in something. So I put my money in U.S. savings bonds, and I had accumulated quite a bit of bonds, before I got out of the Corps. So, but to me, it's that mindset. It's point number one that we talked about. You have to decide that you're going to straighten your finances out. No matter what situation you're in right now, if you're financially strapped, if you're living paycheck to paycheck or even living a paycheck or two behind because, you're trying to keep up, trying to keep the mortgage paid, the rent paid, the utilities paid, whatever, car payment, all that stuff. And we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to break it down. So, accumulating money is a hard thing to do, especially if you're starting out with debt. So we talked about, the first thing you need to do is just make the decision to get yourself financially free. And there's a lot of resources for this online. A lot of people talk about it. There's even an organization, I think, called FIRE, Financially Independent. And so we talk about, the freedom that comes with, your money when you start accumulating money and getting rid of debt. And so to couple that with, we're going to talk about, how that plays out, even with God's word. It's very important to talk about this because I've never found a biblical principle that can be disproved. And in the book of Proverbs, I want to say it's Proverbs 3:9, something like that. It's, give to me your first fruits. So God basically calls us to give away our first fruits. He says, give to me your first fruits of all of your income, of all of your, proceeds. And if you read on, I want to say it's Proverbs 3:10. It talks about, and I will fill your barns abundantly over, to where your barns are overflowing. So God also, not only does he give us the requirement of give to me your first fruits, but it's also what happens when you give to me your first fruits. So if you break that down, to me, that is, God saying, trust me with your money first. Give to my kingdom first. Help other people out. Give to charity. Give to organizations. Tithe at church. Because when you do and you trust me first, I will fill your barns abundantly. I will make sure your vats are full. Because giving your money away first is a sign of and a demonstration of faith, right? And I think a lot of people don't do that. It's like they get money, they accumulate, and it's me, right? I think it's important to talk about Proverbs 3:9. There's a lot of people that probably go along with that. There's a lot of people that don't go along with that. They don't believe, right? They don't believe in God. They don't believe in God's word. I firmly do, because I've seen this, I've seen this in my own life. When I get money and I tithe and I give my money away, I see what happens. And I've seen the results of it. And it's a fact. It's not hyperbole. It's not a facade. It's real principles that really work. And so number 2, give your money away. Tithe. Give, the standard that Christ gives a lot in the Bible is 10%. And I'm not here to even talk about the 10%. I'm not even saying that the 10% is a thing. What I'm trying to say is, I think Christ is trying to give us some sort of a marker of what that looks like. If you give 11% or 9% I'm not here to talk about, whether God's going to, frown if you only give him 9%. But I think what we're trying to say is give your money away. And if you give it away and you help other people and you show good faith that you trust God first, good things happen. So number 2, give your money away, man. And so many times too, especially in life, you find out if you're living for an image or status, you're going to live your life broke, period. I don't care what people say. I don't care, you have to have this flashy car if you get that job so that you look like you're the part. I disagree wholeheartedly. I have a hard stop when it comes to image or position. I just don't believe in living for an image or a position. Don't care. I would drive my truck until the wheels fall off before I go out and buy a new vehicle, because I want to squeeze every ounce of life out of that vehicle I possibly can. It might look like a piece of, junk, but, you don't need to go out and buy a brand new vehicle. You don't need to finance it if you can avoid it. Buy yourself a used vehicle, slap some new tires on it, do some basic PM, some maintenance on it, and drive it until the wheels fall off. So we're going to talk about that. And the things that you finance in short-term and long-term debt. And so if you are not living debt-free, you are broke. A lot of people argue with that and say, well, it's a percentage thing, and if you generate so much income and you have so much debt, you're going to be okay. Well, what you're not accounting for is the economy. Yes, the economy looks like it's it's in an upswing right now, or an uptick, but I can guarantee you what goes up comes down. It's a fact. It's historical, it's cyclical, and it's repetitive, right? Nothing ever goes up and up and up and never comes down. So the economy will come down, and it's a matter of when. I'm not here to talk about a market crash or any of that stuff. I'm not going to predict when the market's going to tank or if the market's going to decelerate. I'm not one of those guys. But what I am here to say is you always have to be ready. Be ready to respond to what the market does, what the economy does, because it affects not just one market, not just one industry, but multiple. So, if you're living for an image, if you're living for a position, you're going to live your life broke, because you got to get away from living up to this image. And I know too many people that do that. They got to have the new house, they got to have the new car, they got to have the greatest and latest technology. They've got to, go on the, extravagant vacations. But I watch them live their life in debt, and they're always in debt. And so we'll talk about that. So the next thing you got to do, point number 3, is you've got to build a budget. You've got to know what your expenses are. If you don't know what your expenses are, you're never going to be able to invest or save money. You have to know what your budget is. How much, expenses do I have, and how much revenue or income do I have coming in? And you allocate that out. And until you know what your expenses are, you're never going to be able to build a budget. You have to know what your expenses are. Now, once you know what your expenses are, then the next point comes through to being able to allocate those expenses and start getting out of debt. There is short-term debt, there's long-term debt. And I think, probably 5 years ago, maybe even as much as 10 years ago, they always considered your vehicle as short-term debt. Well, nowadays, you can pretty much finance a vehicle, for 10 years. To me, that's long-term debt. A vehicle is now considered long-term debt. It's not I'm not paying that thing off in 1 or 2 years. Right? So
the interest on a new vehicle alone is
it's crazy, man.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
It's I think it's like a minimum 6% right now in 2024.
Yeah.
And a vehicle alone is what you're looking at, 30,000 to 90.
90,000, yeah, man.
That's just for a standard vehicle.
Yep.
And they're doing 10-year plans now. That's insane. I think. I don't know. What does everybody else think of that? I thought it was crazy when I went up there asking for a truck, and I was like, well, that ain't gonna happen. I'll just stick with the one I paid off.
Yeah. Yeah, in talking about that, man, I remember, a few years ago, I'm in front of this dude at the dealership, and he's like, I'm looking at a vehicle, and he's like, hey, we'll give you, top dollar for your trade-in. And I forget the figure, but he gave me a figure, and I'm like, no, man, my vehicle's worth $1 million. And he's like, $1 million? And I'm like, yeah, my vehicle's worth $1 million. It's paid off. I owe zero on that vehicle. And to me, that vehicle has a lot of value.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because it doesn't have a payment, man. Yeah. It's being financially free is so liberating, and people need to really understand that. You might have to go through it. You're gonna have to scrimp. You're gonna have to scrounge. You're gonna have to buckle down and save, and it's gonna be horrible, man. You're gonna be eating top ramen, for a long time. But it's critical that you get your finances under control and you get rid of debt. And I think one of the biggest things right now is these subscription services. Nothing wrong with subscription services, but if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you got no business having Netflix. You got no business having any kind of subscription services. Your Starbucks card or your Dunkin' card or whatever, you load it up and you use your card to buy coffee. Look, man, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you got no business having subscription services of any kind. You got no business going to Starbucks in the morning or Dunkin' or even gas station coffee. You've got to get your finances and your spending under control, and too many people don't do that. Credit cards. Credit cards are a mechanism, right? And let's go back to the Bible for a minute. In the Bible, Christ talks about money being the root of all evil. I don't think that he's saying that money is evil. What I think Christ is trying to say is money causes all kinds of evil. It causes all kinds of evil. number one, if you get into the ditch with debt and spending, you are now held captive by money. Money owns you. Debt owns you. Credit cards own you. The banks own you. You're not supposed to be owned by anyone. We should be free as people, but too many people are held captive by credit cards and money, right? I mean, how many times, and I made the same mistake myself, as a young dude, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to throw it on a credit card, man. I'll pay for it later. Later never comes. That credit card's got you. And that 25, 28, 29% interest, when it sinks its claws into you, you're not getting away from it. Mm-hmm. You're going to continue to pay and pay and pay because that interest is always going to keep you ahead of that payment, right?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think society creates that, though. They force you to get in that credit card debt.
Yeah, man.
The way it's been, I try to stay free from them. Ever since I was even in the Marine Corps, I never had a credit card until I got out, and I think mid-college, I think a little after college, I got a credit card, my first credit card, and I try to stay clear from them. But in today's society, it's kind of like they kind of force you to do it, or your credit score ain't high enough, or in other words, you're not in enough debt to pay off your debt. And
Sure.
it's kind of weird. So that's why I never understood why the credit cards that people bind themselves with, we'll just put it on the card, we'll pay it off later. Oh,
Yeah.
Dude, that's $3,000.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got it. I could do it.
Yeah.
And then 5-6 years down the road, you're still paying off that debt.
And the number one thing too, and that's a great point, Mike. The number one thing I like to ask people when they make a decision to purchase something, like some big thing, car, vehicle, whatever, you're basically getting married to that vehicle until you can sell it. And most of the time when you buy it, you're underwater. So the likelihood of you going to sell it, you're going to have to sell it at a negative value, and you're going to have to go in the hole to get rid of it. I've seen this so many times. There's so much to be said about that too, man. Negotiating the price and all that stuff. Go back and forth with that. But when you get to the point where you're financially free, you lose the sense of need. Like, I need to have that vehicle. I need to have that house. Like, for me, I could care less whether I drive off the lot with that vehicle or not. Either I'm going to get a good deal or I'm not buying it. And if I can't pay cash for something, I'm not buying it. So cash is king. You've got to accumulate a lot of cash. So the next point that I think everyone should do is generate additional revenue or income. So you sit down, you bust out a budget. You say, okay, I'm going to lay out a budget. I'm going to look at all my expenses. I'm going to look at my income. I'm going to look at when the payments are due, how much interest. The way you go after your debt is you start at the smallest debt you have and you work your way up to the largest debt you have. I like to say that I go after the interest, but you look at the smallest debt you have and you go after that and you pay that off. And then you move to the next thing and you pay that off. And you take it in small bites. If you remember, man, they taught us, that kind of stuff in the Marine Corps, about how to manage your finances, how to manage your money in the Marine Corps, because they knew, you're not getting millions of dollars to be here. Let's figure out how to manage this stuff. So, they would always tell us, go after the smallest debt you have, pay that off, get rid of that, and then move to the next thing. And I'm here to say, man, when you finally pay off your last payment to the last thing you owe, it is so liberating. And I remember being so strapped, I couldn't even pay my light bill, when I first started my company. And my wife and I knew, we took all of our savings and we bought this, I call it a crack house. We bought this small, dilapidated house in town with no yard, and we used all of our savings to pay cash for this house. And we lived there, and we bootstrapped for 7 years. And we lived on a very limited budget. And even when we did that, I still was strapped financially because I had college, class debt. When I was in the Marine Corps, I took college classes. I had that. I had my truck payment. I had insurance. I had utilities. And so even though we were mortgage free, we were still strapped. And I just remember being so broke. And the day that we finally paid off our truck, I told my wife, I said, I will never go back to that ditch ever again. I will never have to live, to a lifestyle or an image ever again. I never want to do that, because now it's so liberating to be debt-free that it literally it removes the handcuffs from you, because now you're in control of the money. The money's no longer in control of you. And, there's a lot of people that follow Grant Cardone, like the guy or hate the guy. He makes a lot of good, valid points, but he talks a lot about get your money right. You have to get your money right. You have to know, how to control money, not let money control you. And if you're one of those people, going back to the image thing, man, if you're one of those people and you're living for an image, and if you're living for status, you're going to be broke your whole life. You will be broke till the day they put you in the ground. And I'm here to say,
agree.
man, you've got to get away from that debt. You've got to get away from, subscription-based services and, this expensive, lifestyle. Going out to dinner dude, I take my wife and kids out to dinner. I don't think we ever spend less than $100. It's insane.
That's amazing, by the way. It's hard enough for two people not to spend $100 almost.
Yeah.
On going out to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing though. I'll give you kudos on that one.
But it's still, man, it's like, you ain't going out to eat for less than $100. Who can do that 5 times a month? That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So you've got to get control of your finances. And, and I say this, I'm not saying you have to be strapped and live this, very limited lifestyle your whole life. You don't. Because there comes a point in time when the harvest is going to come in, and you're going to be able to, spend money on nicer things. But initially, you got to get your finances under control. And so I would say that, the next thing, the fifth thing that we'll talk about is generating additional revenue. You've got to figure out ways to accumulate extra revenue, whether you're working a side job, you're doing a side hustle, buying and selling stuff on Marketplace, man. A lot of people doing it now. Buy something. Here's a real simple principle, because people are like, well, I don't know how to make money. You buy it cheap and you sell it higher. So it's a real simple concept. You buy it for $20, you sell it for 30, 40, 50 bucks. You make money. And if you could sell it for more than that, good for you. Pack that cash away. I only gambled one time in my life, and I'll share the story real quick. I'm at Vegas, and I played at I think it was a $5 blackjack table. And I'm not a gambler, but I had some dudes, that I went to Vegas with, and they're like, we're gonna go gamble. So I took $20 out, and I gambled this $20 at a $5 blackjack table. And I remember walking away from this game with like $80. And so I said that'll be the last day I gamble, because I always want to be ahead. So I never gambled again in my life. I'm not a gambler. But that's the concept is there. You want to walk away with more than you started with. So if you're hustling and you're selling stuff and buying stuff on Marketplace, buy it, paint it, fix it, clean it, sell it. And don't be I would say, I got a buddy of mine that he says everything he owns is for sale. And I thought that's kind of a novice concept, because he's like, everything I own is for sale. If you give me the right price, it's gone. He doesn't have ownage to anything, really. His truck, his motorcycle, his house. If you gave him the right money, he'd probably sell his house, because it liberates him from having ownership in this thing. That way he's not strapped to this. So you've got to create additional sources of income. If you've got a girlfriend or a deadbeat boyfriend, kick him off the couch, make him get a job. Make him comb his hair, brush his teeth, go out and get a job. Create additional sources of income for your household. If you're single, go out and get a side job or do a side hustle. There's tons of ways to do that. People are on Etsy, Instagram, Facebook Marketplace, buying and selling stuff. There's so many ways now to create additional income and revenue for yourself, so you can get yourself out of debt and then allocate that cash toward, again, that lowest balance you have, pay that off, and then move to the next thing. Hustle, buy and sell stuff, take that cash, pay off the next thing, until you're finally completely debt-free. And people are like, well, how can you be debt-free? Dude, if you're in debt, you even need to consider selling your house. Do what I did. Save all your cash. You might have to live in a dilapidated house for 7 years, but do that if it gets you free, financially free. A lot of people are not willing to do that, and they're okay with being broke. That's fine. This podcast isn't for them. This podcast is for the people who say, I want to become financially free. I'm tired of debt owning me. I'm tired of being in the hole. I'm tired of being strapped. I'm tired of being broke, and I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Some people work a job because they have to. They have to make that money. If they don't make that money at that job, they're going to financially go under because they got a high-paying job, paying them six figures, and they live up to the six-figure lifestyle. And so many people get into that prison, and they never get out because they don't know how to get out. It's like sell off everything you own and get out of debt. Debt is the number one stone, I guess you would call it, out in the middle of the water that pulls people under. It's the anchor. So the last thing we'll talk about real quick is educate yourself about global economies, finances, financial reports, investing. You know, I'm not a big advocate for investing in the stock market because you really got to know your stuff if you're going to play in that arena. If you're going to invest in the stock market, you better know the stock market. Mutual funds, savings bonds, like I talked about, know about those things and how they're backed. A lot of people don't even know the difference between gold and silver standards or gold and paper standards or how our money is backed. A lot of people think, well, our money's backed by all the gold in Fort Knox. No, it's not.
Absolutely not.
It's backed by paper.
Yes.
And paper is backed by paper.
By word.
So, yeah. Legit. So if you don't believe me, look it up. Know economics, study it, read a book, there's college classes, you can take on the side that can teach you economics. But it's kind of like your budget. Until you understand it and know it and understand how it works, you're never going to be able to really control it. You're not going to be able to control your finances and your money. So, finances, man, your money, you've got to figure out a way to get yourself out of debt and get yourself ahead and pack away cash and have that rainy day fund. So if your refrigerator breaks or your stove breaks or your car breaks down, you got the money to replace those things or fix those things, whatever it is. But you got to live within your means, man. And, it's an adage people talk about all the time, live within your means. And too many people don't do that. They got to live up to that image. They got to live up to that status.
Yeah, it's a lot of people in this society is materialistic.
Yeah.
And they believe based upon what they watch on TV or
Man.
social media and all that, they got to buy the most flashy stuff. And yeah, that's the best way to, like you said, go into debt. So, hey, I got to buy this crazy thing because, this bag right here looks beautiful, right?
Yep.
This girl's like, oh, this is awesome. This is cool. She pays for it. $500 bag. Why?
Yep. That's
Why?
right.
Another one's like, guys, we buy like, the most expensive toys, gun stuff, like me personally.
Weapons, ammo.
Yeah. I like
man.
weapon stuff, I haven't paid for anything because I can't afford it right now.
Yeah.
So that's when you have to, what do you call it? Self-control.
Yep.
And that's a lot of things I think that people are lacking in today's society.
Discipline.
Self-control.
Yeah.
Yep. And it'll get you in a bind, man. There's something, I really got to have this. I know, can't you wait for maybe a couple more months? Save up for it?
Yeah.
A lot of people can't. They
Yep.
just go in impulse. Boom. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, that's right, man. All right, well, I appreciate everybody joining us today on our Secure the Perimeter podcast. Money and finances are another way that you can secure the perimeter in your life. It's one of the most important and the most critical because we use it every day. And it's necessary to even live. You've got to have food. You got to have, roof over your head. And so finances are critical, man. Finances are important, and you've got to learn how to control them and get them under control before you get out of control and you go under or you lose everything you own. So, next week we'll talk about some more things, some more important topics, and we will be, including some more podcast guests for your viewing pleasure. But, stay tuned, and thanks for joining.